بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. قال الشيخ المؤلف رحمه الله: الحمد لله الواحد القهار العزيز الغفار مقدر الأقدار مصرف الأمور مكور الليل على النهار تبصرة لأولي القلوب والأبصار الذي أيقظ من خلقه من اصطفاه فأدخله في جملة الأخيار. He says, all praises be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who is alone, unique, all powerful and majestic, the one who has all izzah. To him belongs all izzah, as Allah tells us in the Quran that everything belongs to him. He is Aziz, and he has the power to grant izzah to whomever he wished. تعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the power to elevate whomever he wishes and to degrade whoever he wishes. However, he is also al-Ghaffar. So Allah is al-Aziz, but he is Ghaffar, the one who has the power to forgive, the one who is all forgiving. Muqaddir al-Aqdar, the one who changes our affairs, who does. Muqaddir comes from taqdir. It's the one who draws our affairs. Musarrif al-umur, and in doing so, he changes our states. Mukawwir al-layl ala al-nahar, the one who transforms night into day. And this is a reference to, this night into day is a reference to our state of sin. And also in terms of outwardly, it's about hardships and ease. So it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who transforms hardship into ease. He is the one who removes darkness and replaces it with light. And that's why he says, تَبْصِرَةً لِأُولِي الْقُلُوبِ وَالْأَبْصَارِ. He is the one who is all seeing, tabsiratan, in light of or in seeing, li'ulil qulubi, those who possess the hearts. And this is in reference to people of dhikr. So ulil qulub means the spiritual heart. Wal absar means not just the person. Basar means to see. Basir means to be able to have to see with the heart. So so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who changes our states and transforms the darkness of our hearts into light through his remembrance. Tabsiratan, in accordance to those who possess sound hearts, wal absar, and have the ability to see. Alladhi ayqadha min khalqihi man istafa, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who has the ability to awaken from his creation whomever he chooses to. So Imam Nawawi is telling us that the fact that we are sitting here remembering or going through a book about the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is no accident. We've been chosen for this moment. We've been chosen to remember him. And Imam Nawawi tells us that the fact that Allah chose to awaken you, making reference to the narration of Sayyidina Ali, and some say it's a hadith that their hearts are dead and are awakened through dhikr, or kept alive through dhikr. Then here is alladhi ayqadha, the one who is awakened, who awakens from his creation those whom he chooses. فَأَدْخَلَهُ فِي جُمْلَةِ الْأَخْيَارِ, and in doing so, when he awakens your heart to this state, then he enters you into the community of akhyar, those who are chosen. وَوَفَّقَ مَنِ اجْتَبَاهُ مِنْ عَبِيدِهِ, and he gives tawfiq, he gives ability to those of his servants, min abidihi, فَجَعَلَهُ مِنَ الْأَبْرَارِ, and he makes them from the abrar, the chosen. وَبَصَّرَ مَنْ أَحَبَّهُ, and he gives bassara means, and he gives you insight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you insight to your own state, to your own way, through what? Man ahabbahu, those whom he loves, he gives them insight into themselves. فَزَهَدَهُمْ فِي هَذِهِ الدَّارِ, and he gives you, when you have insight of your own state, of your own actions, then by what happens as a natural consequence of that is that you want little of this world and you want more of the hereafter. And that's why he says, فَزَهَدَهُمْ فِي هَذِهِ الدَّارِ, and he gives them the strength to want less of this world, zuhud. and more of the next. فَاجْتَهَدُوا فِي مَرْضَاتِهِ وَالتَّأَهُّبْ لِدَارِ الْقَرَارِ. And then he transforms you so that you become someone who puts effort, exerts yourself into pleasing him subhanahu wa ta'ala, and turn your attention to Dar al-Qarar, which is the final place, the state where that doesn't change. Dar al-Qarar is the hereafter. واجتناب ما يسخطه والحذر من عذاب النار, and gives you the ability to refrain from anything that hardens your heart. والحذر, and also it could be يسخطه means, and that angers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. والحذر من عذاب النار, and gives you the tawfiq to be aware of those things that will lead us to the hellfire. وأخذوا أنفسهم بالجد في طاعته, and we are, all praise be to the one that made us of those who أخذوا أنفسهم بالجد في طاعته, that they take upon themselves this jid, means this effort in obeying him subhanahu wa ta'ala, وملازمة ذكره بالعشي والأبكار, and makes us of those who are in his remembrance every day and every night. And there's a verse in Surah Al-Imran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says exactly this: Inna fi khalqi samawati wal ard wa ikhtilafi al-layli wan nahar la ayat li ulil albab الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار. So indeed, in the creation of the skies and the earth, and in the changing of the nights and the days, which is exactly what he said earlier, مكور الليل والنهار, the one who changes the nights transforms the night from the day. لآيات, in that, when you see hardship turn to ease, then in that should be a sign for ulil albab, those people who have lub, which means you have a sound mind. الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ, and in doing so, who are the ulil albab? Those who remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala standing and sitting and on your sides. What that means is you remember God in all states. In everything that happens in your life, you attribute it to the one who is deserving of it. وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, and you reflect on the creation of these skies and this earth. رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا, and you believe, oh Allah, you did not create any of this just out of, this is not batil, this is not, you didn't create this for nothing. Subhanaka faqina adhab an-nar, and glory be to you, faqina adhab an-nar, and protect us from the fire of hell. And then he says, وعند تغاير الأحوال وجميع آناء الليل والنهار, and the one who changes everyone's state, changes all our states. We all have, we all sin, we all make mistakes, and we all turn back to God. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, we say all praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who is forgiving, even in changing our states, وَجَمِيعَ آنَاءِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ, in all our states, be it during when we're in the night or when we're in the day. In other words, when we're in a state of sin or when we're in a state of obedience. وَجَمِيعَ آنَاءِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ فَاسْتَنَارَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ بِاللَّوَامِعِ الْأَنْوَارِ, and the one who he ignites the hearts with the lawami' is like the sparks of the lights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the light. Ahmaduhu ablagh al-hamd, and I praise him subhanahu wa ta'ala the highest praise that he deserves, ala jami' ni'amihi. Now, hamd, by the way, in Arabic means to praise in a way that to praise purely because the recipient deserves that praise. You praise because the recipient deserves that praise, not because they've done something for you, but because in and of themselves they are worthy of that praise. And that's what we say when we say Alhamdulillah. It means all praise it belongs to Allah because He deserves all praise. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Then this Rabbil Alameen is separate. It's a separate praise. When we're saying, then what we're saying is all praise be to Allah, and then Rabbil Alameen is shukr. Actually, it's not hamd, it's shukr. What we're saying is, and we are thankful to you for sustaining us and being the Lord of mankind. So here he says, Ahmaduhu, and I praise you with the highest praise, because you are deserving of that praise. And I thank you, ala jami'i ni'amihi, and I thank him for all the blessings that he's bestowed upon us. Wa as'aluhu al-mazid. Now this is a man, by the way, who spent most of his young life, and he passed away in his 40s, early 40s. He spent much of his life writing to wazirs and ministers, telling them to fear God, because every time they did something which was counter Sharia, people came to Imam Nawawi, and he would spend his life just writing back and forth. And I've read some of those letters, and Imam Nawawi he's such a kind soul in the way he addresses the people that are reading. And sometimes he's writing letters and the Sultan doesn't even see it. It's just someone else that's been put in, some administrative person that reads it. And Imam Nawawi, you could tell, he's trying to be kind. And then eventually there comes a point where people are suffering. And there are examples of his writings that I've seen where he's saying, if you were a true man, if you were the God's man on earth, the Sultan, then you would care about the people that are suffering and haven't got enough to eat and are fighting amongst themselves and are not remembering God in doing this. And that's something that you're going to have to bear. And he says in one of his writings that, a number of his writings, he constantly reminds the Sultan that we all have to go back to God, and we're going to be asked as per the hadith. We're all going to be, every one of us is a shepherd, and every one of us will be asked about our flock. And he says, remember that you're the shepherd and we are your flock. And if you don't take care of people when they need you right now, then don't be surprised if they don't look to you, or they don't help you in your time of need. So he constantly writes this. Now, he didn't have an easy life. He had a very difficult life, but he thanks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ala jami'i ni'amihi wa as'aluhu al-mazid. He says, I thank you for all the blessings that you've bestowed upon me. And not only that, but he says, and I ask you to give me even more from your fadl, from your bounty and your generosity. So to focus on all the good things in your life. And I think that's a good lesson for us in this situation, because it's so easy to look at the difficulty. We're here for 3 months. We're here, but we're stuck for 3 months. Or another way of looking at it is, we've got 3 months now of benefiting as much as we can. All those times we complain we've got places to be, and people to see. Well, guess what? You're many of us are housebound. We're in the house. It's time to spend time with our children and our families. It's time to spend time with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's time to do our prayers regularly. So this is a time for us to create a habit, so that when we meet God, be that soon or be that years from now, we meet God, we can at least we've at least created a habit that we would be proud of when we meet him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his. So ashhadu an la ilaha illallah al-azim, and I testify that there is no God but Allah, who is the magnificent, al-wahid as-samad al-aziz al-hakim. وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه وحبيبه وخليله أفضل المخلوقين وأكرم السابقين واللاحقين صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى سائر النبيين وآل كل وسائر الصالحين. So he then goes on to praise the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, referring to him by these beautiful names as Safi and Habib and Khalil, which were names that were given to various prophets. And he refers to him as Afdal al-Makhluqeen, the greatest of all creations. Says فقد قال الله العظيم العزيز عظيم العزيز sorry العظيم العزيز الحكيم فاذكروني أذكركم. Then he gets to the book itself. He says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, Al-Azim, the one who is magnificent, Al-Aziz, the one who is has izzah, and Al-Hakim is the all-wise and the one who commands. فاذكروني أذكركم. And this is something that we need to really really pay attention to this, inshallah. This is why I'm reading this, because this is a book about dhikr. It's about remembrance. And dhikr is not just about the words that you use. Remember that we can sit all day long and start saying words of dhikr, but actually the word dhikr, and Imam Nawawi talks about this actually, is dhikr means, the word dhakara means to remember, but there's two types. There's dhukr with the dhamma, which means to remember with the heart, when the heart remembers. And then there's dhikr with the kasra, which means to remember with the tongue or with the heart. Now, when we say dhikr, what we actually mean by it is dhukr. So we can all say words, that seem to sound like a type of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but if the heart's not engaged and if we're not present in that dhikr, then it's not really dhikr, it's not dhukr, it's just lip service. So here he just reminds us, goes straight to the point. Fadhkuruni adhkurkum. Allah says, remember me, as in truly remember me, adhkurkum, I'll remember you. And there's a hadith in Tirmidhi where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us, he says, you remember Allah in difficulty. It's almost like a commentary of this verse. Fadhkuruni, remember me. In other words, remember me in times of ease, adhkurkum, and I will surely remember you when times are hard. This is a sound hadith in the Jami' of Imam Tirmidhi. وَقَالَ تَعَالَى وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And Allah says, I have not created jinn nor man except to worship me. فَعُلِمَ بِهَذَا. And it's known through this that the greatest thing, the greatest state a person can be in, the greatest state we can be in, is to be in a state of constant remembrance of Rabbil Alameen, the Lord of this universe. وَاشْتِغَالُهُ بِالْأَذْكَارِ. And to be in a state of constantly remembering God through the words of the Messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And now he goes on to tell us why he wrote this book, because there are many books out there, by the way, and some of you may be familiar with this. There are many books out there that are written on Adhkar, but why this book and why did he write it? One of the reasons why he says he wrote it is because he says there's so many books on Adhkar, most of them are focused on the hadith and the sanad. Now, for those of you who don't know what a sanad is, it's the people that narrated the hadith. So in the language of hadith scholars, when we use the word hadith, it means a combination of the text, meaning what's been said by the Prophet ﷺ, and everyone who narrated it. So when you hear qala, haddathana kaza wa kaza, when you hear the names of people in a chain, that chain of narration is actually called hadith with the matan. So it's both the text and the chain collectively that are called hadith according to the scholars of hadith. And the reasons for that are obvious. If you have a text with no chain of narration, well, how do you know if it's true or not? How do you know if the Prophet said it? And similarly, if you have a chain without a text, well, how do you know what was said? So it's the combination of those two that make a hadith a hadith. What Imam Nawawi says, he says, but people spend so much time on doing that. Most lay people don't want to read all of that. They just want to get to the point and learn a hadith or learn some dhikr and to put it into practice. He says, لكنها مطولة بالأسانيد والتكرير. He said many of the books I came across were filled with chains of narration and repetition. فضعفت عنها همم الطالبين. He said it weakens the resolve of people who are seeking just the azkar. فقصدت تسهيل ذلك على الراغبين. And he said, I set out to make life easy for people who desire remembering God. فشرعت في جمع هذا الكتاب. And he said, I began compiling this book. مختصرا مقاصد ما ذكرته تقريبا للمعتنين. And he said, I decided to write a short summary, only containing within it stuff that will be relevant to us. وأحذف الأسانيد في معظمه. And to hide all of those asanid, which in most of the cases, just to keep it short for people. وَلِكَوْنِهِ مَوْضُوعًا لِلْمُتَعَبِّدِينَ. And it says, because this is not a science for the scholars of hadith, this is a science for people who want God. So remember, this is a class for all of us who are seeking God. وَلَيْسُوا إِلَى مَعْرِفَةِ الْإِسْنَادِ مُتَطَلِّعِينَ. This is not for people who are seeking the isnad, which is looking for chains of narration and studying them. He said, rather, بَلْ يَكْرَهُونَهُ وَإِنْ كَثْرَ إِلَّا لَقَلِّينَ. He said, because most of us don't like that stuff. He says, this is, by the way, a hadith scholar. This is a man who spent his entire life doing this. He says, most people don't like this. لأن المقصود به معرفة الأذكار. He said, because you want to know dhikr and how to act upon it. And he said, and وَإِدَاحُ مُضَانِّهَا الْمُسْتَرْشِدِينَ. And he said, you want me to clarify for you how you should go about acting upon a hadith. That's what you want from me. And therefore he says, وَأَذْكُرُ إِنشَاءَ ta'ala. I said, therefore I will mention بَدَلًا مِنَ الْأَسَانِيدِ. Instead of mentioning those, I'll give you something greater. He says, مَا هُوَ أَهَمُّ مِنْهَا. Something even more important than giving you chains of narration. مِمَّا يُخَلُّ بِهِ غَالِبًا. Which most people need and is often missing. وهو بيان صحيح الأحاديث وحسنها وضعيفها ومنكرها. I'll just tell you if a hadith is sound or not. فإنه مما يفتقر إلى معرفته جميع الناس. Because we all need to know whether the Prophet ﷺ said something or not. وهذا أهم ما يجب الاعتناء به. And because that's really important for us. وما يحققه الطالب من جهة الحفاظ المتقنين والأئمة الحذاق المعتمدين. وأضم إليه, and he said, additionally, what I've done is جملا من نفا, and this is where this book takes off, by the way. This is why I really enjoyed this book as my first book, because it wasn't just hadith. He attaches to that. He says, min al-nafa'is min ilm al-hadith. Every now and again, he gives you a nugget from the science of hadith, which makes you, which makes you, when you come across it, you feel like you understand it, and it makes you, it kind of excites you. What daqa'iq al-fiqh, and he also tells you particulars relating to fiqh. So every now and again, he explains fiqh, or muhimmat al-qawa'id, and certain maxims, wa riyadat al-nufus, and he gives us awrad. He tells us this is how you should deal with your own nafs. والآداب التي تتأكد معرفتها على السالكين, and etiquettes that are expected of us and befitting of us as people who are on the path, people of us who are aiming to connect to God. وأذكر جميع ما أذكره موضحا بحيث يسهل فهمه على الأوام والمتفقهين. And there you go. He says, and I will mention all of this with the listener in mind, to keep it as clear as possible, so that everyone understands it, whether you are a somebody who's awam, meaning somebody who just hasn't got much knowledge of the Sharia, or whether you have, you're a scholar. Regardless of which of those you are, I'll make it easy for you. And then he goes on to mention the hadith. وَقَدْ رَوَيْنَا فِي صَحِيحِ Muslim. There's a narration in Sahih Muslim where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, and Sayyidina Abu Hurairah narrates it, that whoever calls to good, then know that the reward of that good is with them, and everyone thereafter who acts upon it will do the same. Why is he doing this? He mentions this hadith to start with, even though it's not the first hadith in al-Adhkar as in the main text. He wants to remind us, and this is all for us too, by the way. He wants to just sneak in that if you remember God, if you connect to God, don't forget me. Saying, if through this book you benefit and you start remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you change, transform your life, then remember that the rewards you get, every reward you amass is a reward that I take with me to my grave. So he said, the hadith says, whoever calls to a goodness, he will get the reward of that good, and he will get the reward of or she will get the reward of every single person thereafter who follows it. This is a sahih hadith mentioned by Imam in the Sahih of Imam Muslim. This is one of the the two main books in hadith. There's no question about its veracity. This came from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you do something good and you encourage others to do it, then you will get the reward of it and their reward, inshallah, on top of that, without diminishing their reward. And there's other hadith in Sahih Bukhari with similar wording. He said, so all I want to do is I want to call people to good. That's his objective here. And I want to be the means by which I want to be the hand through which people come to God. And he says, أذكر في أول الكتاب فصولا مهمة يحتاج إليها صاحب هذا الكتاب. And he says, I made the effort to start this text by focusing on the things that you need, at the beginning. So he really tries to order it in a way that would be useful for all of us. وإذا كان في الصحابة من ليس مشهورا عند من لا يعتني بالعلم, he said نبهت عليه فقلت روينا عن فلان. He says, therefore I will mention the name of the Sahabi. But if I know you don't know, if I know that most people don't know this person is a Sahabi, is that I will just refer to him as a Sahabi, so you know who he is. So he's trying to really make it as accommodating as possible for all of us. And he said, I'm only sticking to the 5 works that I mentioned before: Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Sunan Abu Dawood, At-Tirmidhi, and Nasa'i. And he says, يسيرا من الكتب المشهورة, and other, just a small amount from other works. He said, I'm missing out all of the other details from other narrations. I've stuck to only what I consider to be sound. And then he says, Wallah al-Kareem as'al al-tawfiq, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he gives me ability, tawfiq, wal inaba wal i'ana, that he gives me, he casts his eye upon me, his gaze upon me, wal hidayah wa siyana, and he gives me the ability to be guided so that I can guide, and siyana, the ability to be correct so that I don't misguide. What taysira ma aqsiduhu min al-khayrat, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make easy for me what I set out to do. والدوام على أنواع المكرمات, and give me the tawfiq to continue in those good ways. والجمع بيني وبين أحب. Did someone say something? Sorry. والجمع بيني وبين أحبائي في دار كرامته. And ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we all gather together, those between us and those whom we love, in fidari karamatihi, in the abode of God's karama, which is his generosity. وَسَائِرَ وُجُوهِ الْمَسَرَّاتِ, and the company of all faces that are pleased and happy. وَحَسْبِيَ اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ, and God is sufficient for me and He is sufficient to witness. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَكِيمِ مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ تَوَكَّلْتُ عَلَى اللَّهِ اعْتَصَمْتُ بِاللَّهِ اسْتَعَنْتُ بِاللَّهِ فوضت أمري إلى الله واستودعته ديني ونفسي ووالدي وإخواني وأحبابي. And this is a dua for all of us, inshallah. He says, I rely on God. So we rely on God. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He protects us and that He helps us. And we leave our affairs for wadna umurana ila Allah. We leave our affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that we ask Allah to preserve both ourselves and our religion. وَوَالِدِيَّ وَإِخْوَانِي. So, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve our parents, those whom are alive, and have rahmah and forgive those who have passed away. وَإِخْوَانِي وَأَحْبَابِي, and our brothers and sisters and those whom we love. وَسَائِرَ مَنْ أَحْسَنَ إِلَيَّ, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look, He makes dua for everybody. He says, and anyone who's ever done an atom's weight of good to me, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them too. وَجَمِيعَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, and all believers. وَجَمِيعَ مَا أَنْعَمَ بِهِ عَلَيَّ, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be blessed and glorified for every blessing that He's ever bestowed upon me. وَعَلَيْهِمْ, and them, meaning everybody else, all of us. مِنْ أُمُورِ الْآخِرَةِ وَالدُّنْيَا, bless us with everything that's good in this world and the hereafter. فإنه سبحانه إذا استودع شيئا حفظه ونعم الحفيظ. Because when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if something is put to Him, if something is left with God, then He preserves it, He looks after it, and what a great preserver. Hafiz, meaning somebody who takes a caretaker, what a great caretaker He is. And then He begins this amazing text with فصل في الأمر بالإخلاص وحسن النيات في جميع الأعمال الظاهرات والخفيات. Now from here on, I'm not going to just be reading through the text. So I did this because it's really important that we just get familiar with Imam Nawawi's own words, and you can see for most of us, hopefully listening to those words, you can sense the sincerity of this man. And if you've read or had the pleasure of reading his Riyadh al-Salihin, it's in a very similar fashion, in that he starts with the first chapter is on ikhlas, on being completely sincere before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and something that I implore everybody here to reflect on. It's how do you get into a state of complete sincerity where you're doing something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you can't, and if you're not, then it's there are certain techniques that we can attempt. Now there's some extremely difficult techniques that many of the the awliya will speak of, and then there's the really simple stuff that we can do, and they are things like just the way we're sitting, just making sure that in preparation for the class that you've made sure you've prayed. So if it's Maghrib time for you wherever you are, then make sure you pray your Maghrib at least. Make sure you're reading your salahs on time. We're at home now, so there's literally no excuse. Making sure that we do whatever we can to enter that divine presence, and then having a few minutes before the class starts, just take a moment to yourselves. What we in this day and age we call mindfulness. It's something that the Muslims have for centuries referred to not as mindfulness. We called it contemplation. This is dhikr. Dhikr is to be completely with your soul, completely silent. Or muraqabah is another term that was used by the mystics of the past. Muraqabah is literally mindfulness. It's being aware. Muraqabah means to be at one with yourself. It's to be in the company of yourself. So I would encourage everyone to start practicing on how you would go about gaining even those momentary moments of ikhlas. وحسن النيات, and being sincere in your intention في جميع الأعمال الظاهرات والخفيات. He says, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاءَ. We've not been created except to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely in a state of ikhlas. So what that tells us is that it's in our nature, it's intrinsic within us, that when we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our perfect first state is that we worship God in the purest way. So actually, everything else, whatever state we're in now, however distant we feel from God, if you look to that verse, that's telling us that that distance is actually something that's come about through time. We didn't start off in that way. We didn't start off distant from God. We were created so that we have this pure connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then it's our life, it's our experiences, it's everything else that kind of snatches that away from us slowly. And it happens from, with children, they have a sense of purity that we all relate to. There's something amazing about young children who, when you see just the innocence in how they act, sometimes they'll do something really silly, but there's a sincerity and a truthfulness to it. And even in admission of guilt with a child, with my children, sometimes I ask them if they've done something, fully expecting them to make up a story, and they just tell me the truth, blank faced, and I don't know how to deal with it because it completely throws me. It's a certain sincerity that's attached to children, which as they get older, the dunya takes that away from us. And which is why he says, وَقَدْ قَالَ تَعَالَى لَنْ يَنَالَ اللَّهَ لُحُومُهَا وَلَا دِمَاؤُهَا وَلَكِنْ يَنَالُهُ التَّقْوَى مِنْكُمْ. A reminder that, look, our bodies, our wealth, everything that we have will not go to God. It won't be. It's Allah tells us your flesh will not be reach God, nor will the blood that you, meaning the animals that you sacrifice. Lakin yanaluhu taqwa. What will reach God is your sincerity, your taqwa, your vigilance. I mean, did you really do it for God, or did you do it for yourself? That's what's going to go to God. And I think that's a really poignant reminder for us in this time. If you think about, COVID-19 in a matter of a few weeks has completely changed. It's turned the world upside down. And I'm not saying that there aren't people out there that are suffering far more than we are. Absolutely, there are people that are homeless, that have lost their families through war and through poverty, etc. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But if you contemplate for a moment that just the UK alone, there are 67 million people, and if 1% of the 67 million people, which is the mortality rates between 1% and 4%, depending on the figures that you look at, and it will probably go down. But that's if 1% of people die, that's over 500,000 people that lose their lives within a few weeks. That's not a small number. And if you scale that up internationally, that's millions of people that will lose their lives through this virus, which came out of the blue. It changed everything, the way we do things. Most of us are working from home. Most of us are, some of us probably have lost our jobs. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make things easy for those who have. Some of us are probably worried about other financial matters. But the bottom line is, before all of that, everyone worried for their families. You're worried for your loved ones, for your parents, for your children, for those who are vulnerable. And what we've seen is, there's a lot of fear mongering out there, and there's a lot of talk about how everyone's out for themselves, and to some extent there are lots of bad stories like that. But there's also a lot of community spirit that we're starting to see now, where big corporations are starting to come together and actually start to help, to use the money that they have to try and come up with this. So there's nothing like a shared a shared goal, or a common enemy that brings people together. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us constantly in the Quran, that we are part of an ummah, we're part of a community, and that community is greater than just your people that you know, and it's greater than just Muslims alone. The ummah is made up of ummatul da'wah and ummatul ijaba. It's believers and it's non-believers. When it comes to things like this, it doesn't matter whether you're Muslim or not Muslim. We're all in it together. It's about trying to minimize the risk to the people that are most vulnerable. So it's times like this where we come to realize things that are really important. That the bottom line is, if it's between your family and your job, most of us hopefully will choose our family. So it's a time for us to reflect on things that are truly important. And actually, when we come out of this, and we will come out of this, and very shortly, inshallah, we'll be on the other end of this, and we will look back on this time. Will we look back at it as a time that transformed us for the better? Will we look back at it as, it was just 3 months of sitting at home doing nothing? That's entirely up to us. That's entirely up to us. So I would suggest let's make the best of this, inshallah. Let's make it a time when we connect back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and become more vigilant of Him, and start as part of that journey of what's more important. Well, life is fickle, as you can see. In a few weeks, you go from being completely fine to just everything turning upside down. This world it's transitory by nature. It's transitory. It's not permanent. So taqwa, it's about realization that there is a permanent world that we're going to go to, and we're going to account for everything that we did in this temporary world. قال ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما معناه ولكن يناله النيات, and he says this meaning of what does reaches God, the taqwa is your intention, it's your sincerity. And then he mentions, although he began his muqaddimah by saying, I won't mention any asanid which are changed in narration, he does give one, and this is quite an important one, which is why I'm going to read it, because this is probably the most, if you never learn a hadith ever again, you need to know this hadith. And the hadith goes, أخبرنا شيخنا الإمام الحافظ أبو البقاء خالد بن يوسف بن سعد بن الحسن بن مفرج بن بكار المقدسي النابلسي ثم الدمشقي رضي الله عنه أنا أبو اليمن الكندي أنا محمد بن عبد الباقي الأنصاري أنا أبو محمد الحسن بن علي الجوهري أنا أبو الحسين محمد بن المظفر الحافظ أنا أبو بكر محمد بن سليمان الواسطي ثناء بن نعيم وبيد بن هشام الحلبي ثناء بن المبارك أن يحيى بن سعيد هو الأنصاري أن محمد بن إبراهيم التيمي أن علقمة بن وقاص الليثي أن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نواه فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته إلى دنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. Imam Nawawi mentioned this hadith constantly. Every book he writes, he always begins this. This is the sunnah of Imam Nawawi. He begins with this very important hadith, which is also the case in the Bukhari, because Bukhari begins with this hadith too, which is innamal a'malu binniyat. Know that all your actions, everything that you ever do, will always be judged by your intention and the sincerity of your intention. And every man, every person shall get what they intended, meaning with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he who, and the back of, for those of you who are not familiar with this was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard of a man who wanted to come on the hijrah to Medina. And the reason why he wanted to go on the hijrah to Medina with the Muslims was not because he desired to go to, on this with the Muslims, specifically for the sake of Islam. He wanted to go because he was in love with this woman, and she was going, so he wanted to follow her. And when this word reached the Prophet ﷺ, he said these words, that every man should get the reward of his action. So this man lost out on the reward of being called the muhajirin, the people of the hijrah that moved from one land to another for the sake of Islam. In this case, this man went for the sake of the person that he loved. So it's a reminder that you get, this is not about penalizing that person necessarily. This is more about this hadith. This hadith is about telling us that two people can do the same thing. One of them does it and they are rewarded for it, and the other one does it and they are sinned for it. This is quite a important hadith, because what it does, it takes away our focus on the action, which can be shared by multiple people, and focuses it on the intention, which is the reason why you did it. So we will all be judged by not the actions, but by the intentions that fall behind them, which means there will be millions of people doing the same thing, and one person may get the reward for it. There's a beautiful example of Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah. Imam Ghazali, when he was seen in a dream, and it was often seen, and it still is, of people who see pious people in their dreams, and they ask him these questions, what is it that, in the case of Imam Ghazali, he was seen in a dream, and the person asked him, what entered you, ma adkhalaka ila rahmati rabbik, what is it that entered you into the mercy of your Lord? And he said, was it the Ihya Ulumuddin, the great work that you wrote? Was it the Mustasfa? What was it that you did? Was it the relentless fight that you had against them, the philosophers and the books of theology that you've written against them and so on, preserve so many religions, so many people's deen? Was it any of those? And Imam Ghazali said, no. He said, what got me, he said, what happened is one night while I was exhausted, I was writing, and he said, a fly came and sat on my ink pot. And he said, I let it sit there and drink some ink. and then fly off. And he said, just by me allowing that fly to take its risk, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave me. Now, this is not for me, we don't take, we don't take our religion from stories, but we do take lessons from, we don't take our, religion from dreams, but we do take lessons from dreams. And this is a good example of how somebody who, what we're taking from the ulama, the awliya here is that we're not, we can put all our life into some actions, but if they're completely tainted, then none of it means anything. And it may be the one thing that we considered small, but in the eyes of God, it was big. And that's the thing we'll be judged by. So, just keep that in mind. The Prophet ﷺ told us the best actions are those things that you do little of, but you do, you do regularly. So it's better to do something small, but do it regularly than go gung-ho on something big and not be able to finish it. So if you're somebody who enjoys Quran, read a page or two a day. Don't try and read 5 juz in a day, because it might not be, it's not something that you can sustain unless you do it regularly and build up slowly. It's better that you do, one juz every single month regularly than to do 5 juz in 1 month and then not pick it up again for 10, because the maths doesn't really add up, even though there's a strong feel good factor when you finish your first 5 juz. So this hadith is for hijratuhu ilallahi wa rasulih. So he who does an action, who goes in the hijrah in this case for the sake of God and his messenger, then it will be accepted by God and his messenger. But he who goes on the hijrah for the dunya so that he can acquire it, or for a woman that he wants to marry, then know that for hijratuhu ila ma hajra ilayhi, then the hijrah that he has done, the reward of it is for whatever it is that he went for. And he tells us that this is a hadith which is sahih. وروينا عن السيد الجليل أبي علي الفضيل بن عياض. Fudail bin Iyad, he said this beautiful statement for us to reflect on. He goes, ترك العمل لأجل الناس رياء. He said, to leave doing something, he said, to not do something, meaning to avoid a good deed because of people, this is a riyah. He said, this is arrogance. والعمل لأجل الناس, and he says to do something because of people is shirk. Yeah, to not do a good deed because somehow, what will people say, is a type of arrogance. And it says to do something for the sake of people, that people are watching, so you want, is a type of shirk. Wal ikhlasu an yu'afiyaka Allahu minhuma. And he said, when we say ikhlas, sincerity, what we mean is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from both of those states, where we don't do things for people, be it for for do things for the sake of people or not do things for the sake of people. So we only do things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وقال الإمام الحارث المحاسبي رحمه الله الصادق هو الذي لا يبالي لو خرج كل قدر له في قلوب الخلق من أجل صلاح قلبه ولا يحب اطلاع الناس على مساكن الدر من حسن عمله ولا يكره أن يطلع الناس على السيء من عمله. He says, somebody who's sincere is someone who is not affected even one iota by what other people think. You're not harmed by other people, whether they know about it or not, and you're not excited by what. In other words, everything that you do is purely for the sake of Allah. Al-ikhlasu an tastawi af'al al-abd fi zahir al-batin, and therefore, as Hudayfa al-Mar'ashi says, that to have true ikhlas is to do something, is that your outward state is the same as your inward state. That your outward state is the same as your inward state. What I'm going to do is I've spent some time going through the muqaddimah. This is still he started his text now. So from here on, because I want to give people a break too. So inshallah, from here on, the plan is I will have the text up, but I'm going to kind of make reference to the text and pick 1 or 2 hadiths and spend time talking about them rather than reading through all the hadiths. So I wanted to do that today just because it's always worthwhile going through the muqaddimah, the introduction of the Shaykh, because you get a flavor of why it is that they wrote the text and what their purpose is. So inshallah, hopefully it's been beneficial for people. As I said, as we go on, inshallah, this will become we'll have probably more of a routine attached to how we cover this text. But for now, my main objective is that I expose people to the Kitab al-Adhkar, and if all of you, if even one of you, but ideally all of you, look to this text as every lesson, try and take one or two points from it and implement them, inshallah. I genuinely believe it will have a lot of benefit for you, inshallah. And of course, as Imam Nawawi says, it'll have benefit for him and benefit for me, if it's, you know, if it's something that you start doing because you've studied it in this class. So I'm going to pause here, inshallah. So are there any questions? So Nader is asking, how many weeks course is this? I don't know, because we never set out with a deadline. The reason why we did this is that everyone's on lockdown. We thought, let's bring ilm to people if people can't come to ilm. So let's make it as accessible for as many people as possible. So we will do it for as however long this lockdown continues, and thereafter we'll just see, inshallah. Which English copy would you? There's so many questions coming. I'm losing track of them. Hold on, let me make it. Okay, so if people stop asking questions just for a second, just so I can catch up, and then I'll let you carry on asking. Where are we? Okay, anyone? So English, I don't mind which English one you get. There's one by, I think it's Duras, are they called Duras Publications? Which is not bad, but it really doesn't matter, to be honest. Do I have a function to mute everyone? I actually do, and I'll use it next time, because I know it came up a couple of times. And also someone keeps scribbling on my text. I don't know if other people can see it, so I don't know why that keeps happening. It's definitely not me doing the scribbling. So you should be able to select the mute everyone option. Yep, I can. So I will, inshallah. Okay, looks like YouTube is playing. That's why it was echoing. Yep, got that. The next class starts at 9:30. We checked it out. So I assume till then, is this today at 9:30? So yes, the next class will be at 9:30, and ordinarily this class would go to 9:15. But for now, what I want to do is I'd rather stop at 9 o'clock, just because if there are any issues with getting people logged in, then maybe we can try and resolve them before the 9:30 class starts. So the aim is this class will be 7:30 to 9:15 every Monday, and we've got a number of classes over the week for those of you who've seen the timetable. Which English copy? I've mentioned that. I've commented that already. Jazakallah khair for listening. Any other questions? How long will each lesson last approximately? As I said, it's from 7:30 to 9:15, and then the next class is 9:30 to about 10:15, 10:30 maybe. So inshallah. No more questions? Oh, there are questions. I've missed all of those. Okay. I'm listening from Turkey, so I have no access to English books to buy at the moment. Is there a chance to get an English version of this book as PDF? I don't know. So I'll have a dig around, inshallah, if we can find something. Otherwise, if someone else has it, please do just email it over to info@sacredtext.co.uk, and we'll make it available. Will we have to log back in again? No, you can. In fact, yeah, you can stay on. I think you can stay on, so you don't have to. So I'll close it, but you can stay in, because it's the same link that works for all of our classes, inshallah. So will this be on a Monday going forward? Yes, it will. This class will be. Will the 9:30 be available to view later? Yes, but I don't want to promise we'll be recording every single lesson at the moment, just because we've got to try and figure out what's practical given the number of classes that we'll be running. Will we continue to use this? Yes, but we're also going on YouTube live, so it'll be on YouTube live too, inshallah. So we'll just need to, but for now, Zoom, I think it will work. I promise you. It's just this, we've had an issue with the, we have changed it over so we can manage 500 people rather than 100, but it just hasn't worked yet. So is yesterday's Sirah class? We didn't have a class yesterday. We've only started today. So yeah, Sirah will start from Monday. Start from Monday. What do you mean exactly to have your outward state the same as your inward state? That's a good question. What does that actually mean? It means being complete. So what is hypocrisy, right? So hypocrisy in its purest form is where there's two types of hypocrisy. There's a type of hypocrisy where your belief doesn't match your action, and there's a type of hypocrisy where your action doesn't match your belief. Yeah. So, for example, someone claims to believe in God and yet doesn't behave as though they believe in God. It's a hypocrisy of the actions, meaning the belief is there, but the actions don't match the belief. And in some cases, people act as though they believe in God, but they don't believe in God in their heart. So both of these are a type of hypocrisy. Now, when we're talking about hypocrisy of actions, what that's saying is, I mean, where somebody claims to be worshiping, let's say praying. There's a really funny anecdote of somebody who was praying once, and he heard the door move, so he decided he started praying really hard, really slowly, and really reading eloquently. And then when he finished and gave his salam, eventually he turned and saw that it was actually a dog in the door. And the anecdote is about how you put all of that work into perfecting your prayer, thinking that somebody's watching you, for it to turn out to be just a dog. So the question for us is, how much of our actions, or the way we do our actions, are driven by what people think or how people perceive us, and how much of it is driven by a connection to God. So this idea of outward and inward is inward being your belief in God. If you truly believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then do your actions marry up with that? Meaning, when you pray, do you pray with that firm belief in your heart? Now, this is a maqam in itself, by the way. I'm not saying that everyone's perfect. There's an example of this where the Sahaba, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, he said, "Ya Rasulullah, I feel like a hypocrite." And he said, "Why?" He said, "Because when I sit with you, I feel like I'm in heaven, and when I leave, I go back to eventually fall back into my normal routine." And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam reminded him that that's the nature of being human. Right? So it's not saying that, ikhlas is the effort. It's not about the end result always being perfect, because God didn't create us. He created us perfect in the sense that perfect as we were supposed to be. But in terms of our ability to sin and make mistakes and turn away from God, these are all something that we're also created with. That's why Allah also gave us the ability to do tawbah. Right? And that's why he's one of his divine names is Tawwab, the one who forgives. And the hadith says, man taba min adh-dhanb kama la dhanba lahu, that he who turns to God after sinning is as though he had no sin in the first place. So that tells us that actually even sin and falling and making mistakes is very much a part of who we are. But ikhlas is about endeavoring to change and do things for the sake of God. So as long as we keep endeavoring to do things for the sake of God, and we check ourselves every time we do things for other reasons, then that's a type of ikhlas, inshallah. Are you sticking to the current topics outlined on your website? I hope so. But let's see where they take us, and we might go ahead. But if people have suggestions of other things that we can add or do things later on, do later on, then please just email us to figure out how to work the audio. But would be handy to have instructions when registering, as I've not used this app before. Very good point. Inshallah, that's something that we need to pick up. Will there be class tomorrow? Just follow the timetable. I believe there will be something, but I can't for the life of me remember what. So inshallah, there is a timetable that's going around, so hopefully you're in touch with people. If not, just email us at info@, and then we'll info@sacredtext.co.uk, and we'll fire one over to you. The class at 7:30 tomorrow. Okay, there you go, done. So people are answering on my behalf. I should be paying more attention here. That's fine. Should we buy the Arabic book to make notes on? You don't need to be honest. You don't. We do have a PDF of the Arabic. So what we can do is you can make it. We'll make that accessible. We'll put that in a Dropbox and maybe share that with everybody. That might be a way forward. And then if you want to print it off, by all means, print it off. But you don't have to. I mean, Kitab al-Adhkar, let me start again. Kitab al-Adhkar is a beautiful book to have in your shelf. So if you can have it at home, I'm not going to say don't have it, buy it. But for this lesson, do you need to have it? Not necessarily, because I'll have the text up. And inshallah, you can make notes on your iPad or whatever it is that you're using. Somebody's asked that question about the PDF. You should try using Slido for your Q&A sessions. Slido is good. There's also a poll here, but I'll have a look into Slido. I have used it once before, but I wasn't the administrator on it, so I'm a bit of a technophobe, which is not good for these sorts of things. So I'm trying to minimize the amount of technology that I'm using at any one time, because I do break things. So would it make sense that we have the English version? Sorry, just trying to see what I need. Would you? I don't think you need the English version, but as I said, there is, if you Google online for Kitab al-Adhkar, there is an edition that came out a few years ago in English, which is quite good. So by all means, just pick up a copy. You said there's a certain reason and time. Okay. At what point does Allah give you insight into yourself? You said there is a certain reason and time. Will there be a reminder for each classes via email? There probably won't be a reminder each week. I'm hoping because it's so regular, there's continuity. So if you can build it into your routine, inshallah, that would really help us. We're basically on lockdown like you guys, so it's a case of we've set these classes up and we're just going with it. So we haven't got much administrative support at the moment, just because everyone's got a lot going on at the moment. So it's difficult to be able to get that. So I don't want to promise that we'll set a reminder. I'll speak to a few people, and if we can get something, I will. But I don't want to make that promise. What I would suggest instead is stick it in your diary. If you've got a work diary or any other type of diary that you're using, stick it in that, inshallah. And I would say, just as a kind of a set, housekeeping for all of us, do make an effort to attend every single lesson, because you'll benefit a lot more from it, inshallah, if you're regular. Will there be a reminder for each class? Okay, I've answered those questions. And as to at what point does Allah give you insight into yourself? You said there is a certain reason and time. That's a good question, and the answer is I don't know, and I don't think anyone truly, nobody outside of yourself truly knows. The only thing you can say is there are various narrations on this. So many of the mystics of the past said things like, you know that God's given you insight when doing good deeds is more beloved to you than not doing them. So there's indications that you are on your journey to God. Yeah, but don't confuse that with doing stuff that is between you and God, but is at the cost of the people around you. Now that's a fake type for me, and this is my personal view, that's a dangerous place to go, because I've encountered many people in my life that are very sincere and very practicing people, and they are certainly just to God, but they're unjust to the people around them. Yeah. So actually, part of sincerity and having insight into yourself is that insight should make you aware of the people around you. Right. So insight here, this insight would mean, this basira would mean that you're not just aware of God, but you're aware of your presence with the people around you. That means that you do things considerately. And I think that's the key thing for Muslims. A sign of a believer is how considerate you are. And this is a test for us now. How considerate are the believing Muslims? And we're seeing it amongst our non-Muslim counterparts. The amount of consideration that's out there is phenomenal. So there's we need to really, if as a sign of faith for us, should be that we have as much consideration for the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this affinity to those who are created, because we all came from the same soul. As Allah tells us, I created you from a single soul. So we all have a connection and affinity to every other soul out there. That's another indication. If you feel a sense of compassion towards people that you know and those who you don't know, it's a sign that you're connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're on that journey. So none of us have perfected it. The only perfection of that state is when you stand before God and you'll be judged, we'll be judged by it. But this world is just about doing the best that you can, and indications are just hope. They're just signs for us that we're on the right track. And just like they are indications, people around you are indications too. If people are telling you that you're not, you're spending too much time doing your nafil and not enough time with your family, then don't remember. Allah says that Allah leaves signs on the horizons. He tells us in the Quran, yeah. Allah has left these signs everywhere. His ayat on the heavens and the earth and around us, which tells us that when people around us are telling us that we're not doing something, we're not being just, and we should take it seriously. We should not dichotomize it as if it's either God or it's people that are around me. That you don't have to make that sacrifice. The two go hand in hand. Your family is in a sense, is your religion. The Prophet ﷺ, there are ample examples of where there's a beautiful example of a man coming to the Prophet ﷺ and said, and it's poignant now actually, this hadith, and he said, I want to go and fight in your cause. And the Prophet said, of course, ahlan wa sahlan. And he said, people keep telling me I shouldn't because I've got family. And he said, do you have elderly parents? He said, yes. He go home and look after them. Yeah. And that's for us too, because you've got people now that are on the front line and they're doing the best that they can in the NHS and other services, which is amazing. But if that person comes home and has to, and there's a elderly family member, then there's a risk that that they might be infecting them and causing them harm, especially if that's a parent. So weighing that up is really important, and the Prophet ﷺ gave us advice on that. But also with these sorts of things, I mean, going on to the pandemic, is there's a beautiful hadith of the Prophet very clearly told us centuries ago, well before anybody else, when there is a plague in your community, he says, you know, fi biladikum, he said, don't, nobody leaves and nobody enters. But there's a narration, there's another narration by Imam Tirmidhi, that's the Bukhari narration. In Tirmidhi, the hadith is, fi bayt, you know, stay in your house, not stay in your city, but stay in your house. So he told us to stay and self-isolate. That's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, to self-isolate and stay in your house. And he also said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because people said, well, how do we go to the masjid? How do we do all of these things? And he said, those who die in their house, meaning listening to that instruction so that other people don't suffer because of it. That's a type of mercy from them. That's a compassion that they have. What that means is the Prophet tells them that they will die the death of a martyr. Yeah. So it's quite, there are powerful hadith out there about this sense of affinity and the importance of people around us and being considerate of them. Till towards Ramadan, also, will the timetable change for Ramadan? Very, very good questions. I think that's a future me problem at the moment. Inshallah, we will definitely think about it in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But you guys stick around. You know, this is we will talk about this together and we'll decide together. So I'm not making the decisions. We will make the decisions together, inshallah. When you say that doing things for others is shirk and not doing things because of others is arrogance, did this book teach you how to avoid those, or was it simply saying not to be? So yes, so there is an entire section on arrogance and these sorts of things. So it does go through some of these points. But I'll say this though, that you know, things like arrogance are the hardest thing with arrogance is recognizing that you're arrogant. That's why Imam Ghazali in his Mukashifat al-Qulub, when he talks about it, he says arrogance is the worst form of mistake, the sin you can make. He says it's the sin, he calls the sin of the devil. And he says the reason is because in Arabic, the word for arrogance is kibr. Kibr comes from kabir, it means to be big. It's to think yourself better or bigger than other people. And it's called takabbur because on the scale of tafa'ul in Arabic, it means to attempt to be. In other words, you're attempting to be better or bigger than you actually are. The danger with that state is that you may attempt to be better than you actually are, but your mind thinks you are better than you actually are. Therefore, you don't have insight into your arrogance. So the best kind of solution to arrogance is that when you become self-aware and you start thinking about how your behavior impacts other people, that itself is the best way of diluting that arrogance, to bring it down a notch, because you start seeing the impact you have on other people. Just listening, simple tools are the most useful tools. Let me give you an example. We all know how to listen, right? The Quran tells us when you listen to the Quran, don't do sama' of it, do istima' of it. Allah tells in the Quran there are two different types of listening. There's active listening and then there's passive listening. Today, you can read, there's an entire book that I've called by Nancy Klein. For those of you interested, by all means read it. It's called The Thinking Environment, right? The Thinking Environment. And then she wrote another book, follow on from that. So Thinking Environment, that's all about, sorry, it's called Time to Think, not Thinking Environment. There's a chapter called Thinking Environment in there. It's called Time to Think. And she tackles the subject of listening and how we may be listening, but we're not actively listening because we're not fully present. So active listening means that you absorb what the other person's saying as though it was you saying it. You look at what they say through their eyes. And what that means is that you embody them and you then accept it and you weigh it up as though it came from you. So you're not allowing for any bias from yourself. So you really make an effort to pay attention, and that transforms the way you listen, because you go from being quite, sometimes if it's something you don't like, to being quite aggressive and having a very standoffish approach, to being accepting of it. Now there's arrogance in that, and so learning how to respond and listen itself, what it does is it's an antidote to the arrogance, because it teaches you behavioral techniques, really simple techniques, which would stop you from becoming your own worst enemy, stop you from being your own inhibitor. And the Quran taught us that centuries ago, where Allah says, "Fastami'u lah." when the Quran is being recited, what's the verse? وإذا قرئ القرآن فاستمعوا له أو كما قال سبحانه وتعالى. When the Quran is being recited, then listen attentively, actively to it. Don't become your own worst enemy, and don't not heed the call. Don't just listen to the beautiful words, but not actually pay attention to the meanings of those words. But inshallah, yes, as time goes on, we will touch on some of these subjects. Let me keep going. Will there be any classes with topics tied towards Ramadan? The clocks reset. Yeah, so we'll just, the time will stay the same. The clocks will reset, and we'll just, the timetable won't change, inshallah. No Monday, 0 class on Tuesday. Okay, we've got that. Okay, I think I've answered all the questions. Yeah, this is called the Book of Remembrance, Kitab al-Adhkar. And then Jazakumullah khair to all of you. I hope it's been beneficial. Again, apologies that I've been reading quite a lot. It's just because I want to make sure that we cover the muqaddimah. It's so easy to just overlook it. And then inshallah, as I said, there'll be more discursive and probably more of me in future classes where I can have more of a kind of free role with it, inshallah. So let's see where it takes us.